Hi everyone, welcome to JavaTechie. In this tutorial, we'll discuss one useful plugin called Entity Spring REST Code Generator. Okay, alright. Being a developer, we always look into a shortcut solution. It's not that because we are lazy. In other hand, we are looking for these shortcuts to improve our productivity. Let's say if someone will tell you, hey, you please write your model or entity class, then all other layers of your application, including test case, I will write on behalf of you. I believe no one will deny that option because it will save lot of your time. Now, you might have a question, hey, do we really have such kinds of tool in the market? Yes, that is where this Entity Spring REST Code Generator plugins or tool introduced by JetBrains team. What all you need to do, you just design your schema in the form of entity, then next it will generate fully implemented classes for you. If you'll go and check official page of this particular plugin, Entity Spring REST Code Generator, then you can find the entire details about this plugin. So as we discussed, if you'll just create your entity class or your model class, then on behalf of you, this particular plugin will generate these are the classes for you. Okay, so you can see here it will generate controller REST API with Swagger documentation, and also it will generate DAO class for you, which is nothing the repository class with pagination and sorting implementation, and it will create DTO for you. It will create the fully service implementation for you, and it will use the mapper map struct to convert your object to or DTO to entity or entity to DTO. So this kind of data conversation can be done using this map struct. The entire template or the code implementation will be generated by this particular plugin. And if you observe the most beautiful part of this particular plugin, it will write the integration test for you, including the Mockito. Okay, so you can see here Mockito JUnit 5 unit test case. So these are the classes will be generated by this particular plugin. How cool is this, isn't it? It will take maximum 2 minutes for any developer to create fully implemented Spring Boot project, where you will have your ready-made controller class, service, DAO, including your test cases. And how you can use this particular plugin, the steps is already mentioned in the official page. So these are the steps you need to follow, and these are the dependency you need to include while creating your Spring Boot project. Okay, so without any further delay, let's quickly demonstrate this particular plugin or tools in action. So let's get started. So to work with this particular plugin, first you need to add that plugin in your IntelliJ IDEA. So what you can do, click on this IntelliJ IDEA, then click on Preference, then you can choose this plugin section, click on that. Already I installed it, so I will find it inside this installed. So I will search for Entity Spring REST Code Generator. Okay, it's already installed for me. If you are doing it first time, go to the marketplace and search with this particular key entity. Then it will suggest you a couple of plugin. Then choose the first one, Entity Spring REST Code Generator. Okay, so just click on the install. The way you are finding this install icon enable for other plugins. Similarly, if you are doing it first time, this will be in the green symbol and it will enable for you to the install. Okay, for me you can see here the status is already installed and I am seeing it inside this install tab. So for first time you can search it from the marketplace and make sure to install it. Okay, so once this particular plugin is with you, then you need to follow the steps given by this particular page. Okay, so first let me create a project and make sure to include these are the dependency. So what is that? Spring Boot data JPA. Data REST is optional, it's not mandatory. And if you want to enable the Swagger, you want to add this Swagger UI and Swagger Fox. And this map struct is required to convert your DTO to entity and entity to DTO. So again it is optional, but it's good practice to keep this particular dependency, these two dependency. Okay, map struct. Fine. Now let me create a project. Go to IntelliJ IDEA, click on File, New, Project, then click on the Next. Then I will specify the group ID, com.JavaTechie. Demo, I'll change the artifact ID something like employee service. Fine. Then JDK version 8, and I'll keep my package up to JavaTechie. Now click on the Next. Now what all dependency we need to add? We need to add Spring Data JPA and Data REST, that is optional, and these things we cannot found from the Spring initializer. We need to add manually. Okay, so for now I will add Spring Boot Web, Spring Data JPA, and I want to use the H2DB, so I will add the H2 database. So just go here and just add web dependency, which is Spring Web, then JPA, which is Spring Data JPA, and I want to use H2. It is up to you. If you want, you can choose the MySQL driver as well. Okay, since you have JPA, you can add any database implementation. To make it simple, I am just using the H2. And since you are using the map struct, Lombok having some conflict with that, so I'm not going to add the Lombok. If required, I will add the getter, setter, and constructor manually. Now these things is enough. Click on the Next. Click on Finish. So it's imported successfully. Now if I'll go and check my pom.xml, let me zoom this. I added the dependency, web dependency, JPA and H2. Okay, nothing else. Now the first step, if we'll go and check in the browser, you need to include this dependency, right? So these three dependency, because already we added these are the dependency while creating the project. Now first let me add this Swagger dependency. The version can be anything based on your compatible version what you are using of Spring Boot. So I will add the Swagger dependency here. So inside dependency, I will add this Swagger. Okay, you can import your project. Once it is successful, then next you need to add these two dependency, map struct final and processor. So this processor is be part of your plugin. Okay, this should be part of your Maven plugin, and this is the dependency. So go to the pom.xml, then I will add this dependency, and then I will add the, just let me check, map struct processor as part of the plugin section. So simply go to your pom, then you can see here we have plugins, and I will add the one more plugin, map struct processor. Okay, again the version is up to you, just do the re-input. Fine, we are all good. Now it is asking me to upgrade, but fine, I will keep the 2.7.0. Let me close the pom.xml. Now next you can create your package. Okay, so I will create a package called new. You can see here, right? Once I added that plugin, the first tab is showing that particular plugin name, entity Spring REST code generator. But as per the steps, create your entity, then tell to this particular plugin to generate your other services. When I say services, it will be controller class, service class, DAO class, and mapper class along with your test case. Fine. So first I need to create a package for my entity class. So just use the package name as entity. It's fine. You can keep the model as well. Okay. Entity. Then just create one class. Let's say I will create a class called employee. Let me zoom this. Okay, then first I need to add few field here. Okay, private int id, private string name of the employee, then you can add department, private string department, private double salary. Fine. Since we are using Spring Data JPA and we are using H2 implementation, make sure to define this @entity, and it is optional for you to define @table. If you will not define @table, then table will be created based on your class name. That is the basic thing, right? And I need to define this as a @id so that it will be act as my primary key. And I want this to be auto generated. Generated value strategy. I just want to use the identity. Okay, so what I'll do here, I'll just change this data type to integer. That's fine. Since we don't have Lombok, I'll write the constructor and setter getter manually. So what I'll do, I'll add the constructor, the default one. Then I'll add all argument constructor with all the field. Then we'll add the getter and setter method. Fine. Now since we created our entity class, next we can tell to this particular plugin entity spring rest code generator to generate other services. When I say services, it should generate controller, service class, DAO, mapper and test cases. Okay. So how I can tell to that particular plugin? Just right click on your entity class. Then you can see this option entity spring rest code generator. Just click on this. Once you click, immediately you can find here there are so many packages: controller, DAO, DTO class, and this entity we created, then mapper class and service class. Okay, and the most beautiful part, if you open your test, it created another package, and if you open the test case, it has written the test for all the endpoint. Okay, when I say endpoint, if you'll go and check in your controller implementation, you can find the implementation, or you can find the entire CRUD API. See here, save employee, find the employee by ID, delete the employee by ID, fetch list of employee from the DB, and pagination to fetch page of employee DTO and update. Okay, and also if you observe it following the proper coding standard. From the controller, it is giving the DTO class, then it is using the mapper mapstruct class to convert the DTO to entity while calling the service. You can see here it follow the proper coding standard. Okay, it seems this particular plugin is smart enough to understand what is the entity you have, and it is generating the CRUD implementation rather than generate the template for you. Okay, it's not that it just give you the template, along with it created actual call from controller to service and from service to DAO. So there are some compilation error, we can fix it right away. But if you check the flow from, okay, let me zoom this. Okay, I'll show you for one method. Can you see here? This is the call to save the employee, and this is your controller method, right? And if you observe, it converted, take the DTO and convert it as a entity object using the mapper class, and then it called the service here. You can see here from controller it called the service. If you go and check, it also follow the implementation based on the interface. Okay, if you open this, you can find the employee service IMPL, and from the service you can see here it injected the repo and it called the repository or DAO layer from this service class. Can you see here? This is what it injected and it called the service. This is the actual 3-layer flow, isn't it? Now let's go ahead and fix each and every compilation error. So let's see what all compilation error we have. Go to the employee controller. So we have everything is clear here. Then why this guy is crying? Let me see. This is because of this employee service update method. Okay, so this change as a integer. Fine. Now go to the employee controller IMPL. There is no error. We are good with this controller IMPL. Close this. Now go and check the other classes. Go to the DAO. Everything is clear here. There is no error. You can clear the DAO. Now next, this abstract DTO is not required. You can delete it. Even though it has the reference, still you can delete it. Okay. And employee DTO is everything. Okay. This we can remove because we want to use the direct DTO. We don't want any abstract implementation of it. Fine. Then entity is clear from our end. Reference mapper, you can directly delete it. Then go to this generic mapper or employee mapper. Just exclude this particular uses and you can make it true. Fine. So generic mapper, there is no error. Mapper is fine, right? And then the problem is there in compilation error in IMPL. Go to the service IMPL. What is the two error we have here? Okay, there is an additional bracket. You can remove it. Fine. All error is went, right? There is no error now. So we are clear. Fine. Now let's modify the test class because there are few compilation error in test. First thing, we didn't added the JUnit 4. So let's add that in our class path. We removed this reference mapper, right? Just remove it from here also. And just, okay, we added it, right? Okay, we need to import the run with statement. Just add it, import class. Fine. And also we need to add this before import class from JUnit. Add this test annotation, import class. Fine. So there are still 17 error. I will tell you why this error is and how we can fix it. Let me zoom this. Fine. So if you observe here, this is the get all method to fetch list of employee from the DB, and see here this particular plugin is smart enough. It created Mockito for you. When you will call your service, rather than call the actual DB, it will give you some hard code value, and from where it will get the hard code value, it's supposed to create one class called employee builder, but some minor bug is there for this particular plugin, so it was unable to create that. So we'll create the class here. Okay, not here, man. Control Z. I will just create it outside, create a class. I will create a separate package called util because we want to give some mock data. So that is the reason we need to hard code some object. So that is the reason I'm creating this employee builder class inside the util package. So I'll create a new package called util, and I created one employee builder class. Now each method I'll create there. Create a method get list of DTO. What this method will do, it will return you the list of employee DTO object. So what I will do for now, rs.asList, I will create a new employee DTO object, new employee DTO. First let me check in employee DTO we have constructor. No, I need to add the constructor. At least you should have basic knowledge to do this step, right? Everything is generated by tool, and we need to give at least 1 minute efforts to complete the error or just clear the error, right? Fine. So get list of DTO method I created here, and I want to return the list of employee DTO object. So ID is let's say 1, name is let's say Basant. What else we have? Employee DTO, ID, name, department, salary. Department let's say dev, salary let's say 50,000. Okay. Then I'll create another employee object. This is we are writing for our test case. If you will not write for test case, it's fine. You can run your endpoint directly. So I'll change something like ID is 2, name is something like Santosh, he is QA, and package is let's say 80,000. Fine. Then let's create the second method. From the service call, when they will do employee service.find all, it will give you the entity object, right? So that is how employee builder.get list entities method name is there. So somehow it's not adding the implementation with hard coded value. We'll add it here. I'll just copy this. Okay, I'll just change the constructor. Employee, instead of employee DTO, I'll make it employee. Fine. Now what next? The error is there in get DTO. So I'll return one employee DTO object from here directly. Similarly, there is another method to get entity, right? You can go through this particular code anyway. I will share in the GitHub, or you can add a plugin and check how smartly it is generating your classes and methods. The name also it is following the proper coding convention, return, I will directly return the new employee object. Fine. And there are small bug specific to the Mockito API. We can fix it right away. So the error here, this should be any int. Okay. Then where is the error else? Any integer. This method itself is not there in mock, but the method name is any of int. Just do this small change. Fine. Now what else method error we have? Let me check it. Okay, we missed one bracket. Just add it. Then there are two more error. Find by id, this should be integer, not long. Just remove it. Okay, there is one method, any integer. Just remove it. We are good with our test case now. Now, one thing you can do, again it is up to you, it's not mandatory. Since this particular media type in all the method application JSON UTF-8 is there, you can just remove and keep application JSON because that is deprecated. So I will keep the same in all the case. The number of endpoint you have in your controller, number of test cases written, which is nothing, the integration test. So we are good now. What is the warning here? Fine. So now what next? You can configure the proper URL of your endpoint because we are doing the mock MVC call, right? Mock MVC.perform method type and what is the URL and what status we are expecting, everything we are giving here. So what you can do here, the URL mapped here, endpoint URL. But if you'll go and check in your controller class, go to the controller, and if you'll go to the IMPL, let me zoom this guys. The URL is API/employee, right? Just copy this URL and go to your test case, simply paste it. Just remove this. Fine. And since this service and employee mapper class is being used from your controller class, so better I'll keep it mock rather than mock bin annotation. Just import it. Fine. So you're good now. First let me run the test case, then all the endpoint of this particular controller, employee controller IMPL, will run and will check in our H2 console. But before that, I need to add the H2 console details in my application.properties file, right? Just add this Spring H2 console enable, and what is my, one second, there is the lag in my application. Let me zoom this. Fine. I just added the H2 console enable, then my data source URL, and I specify this matching strategy of path matcher and path matcher. The reason we are adding the path matcher here, right? While evaluating this particular JSON path. So it's recommend to add this application.properties if you are using spring.2.5.x. More than that, if you are using, then you must need to specify the strategy while writing the integration test. And for data source configuration for H2, this is enough to enable and just add your data source URL. Now we can quickly run our test case. Just go to the main class, like the class of the test, and right click here, run this particular test. It will take few seconds to run all the test scenario, like all the endpoint we have in this controller. Let's wait it to complete. Can you see here? It ran all the test case and the result is succeed here. Save the employee and then get by ID, update, delete all, and sorry, get all and delete. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major CRUD operation test scenario it executed and all the test result is succeed. It, since we are using the integration test using this mock MVC, it will call your actual endpoint that it will perform your operation. Okay, fine, then we are good with the test scenario and it is working as expected. Now let's run our application so that we can verify the endpoint is really working or not. And one more thing, since we added the Swagger, I need to create a config class because we just enable the Swagger by adding the dependency, but we need to add the docket information, right? Our API information. So I will create a package. It's optional for you. If you don't want to watch the Swagger implementation, you can ignore this step. But better let me keep it. Config. I will name it new Java class. Let's say Swagger config. Fine. Then I need to let me zoom this. I need to enable Swagger. Then I need to annotate @configuration. Then you need to provide your docket API info. Just let me add it. Fine. So what you can do here, you can change your endpoint, which is, let me check what we have. API/employee. If this pattern match, then document that. So let me add it here. Fine. Then you can change it to the employee service. Fine, then you can change the version, anything you can specify here. Okay, it's supposed to allow OpenAPI 3 integration, but it's not allowed yet. Still, this particular plugin will consider only Swagger. Okay, so that is what I tried earlier, but it didn't help me to integrate with OpenAPI 3. So that is the reason I tried with Swagger. So you're good now. What we can do, I will start my server and I will show you all the endpoint of this controller class, whether it is really we are able to access it using our H2 DB or not. In future, if you don't want to use H2, you want to customize using any NoSQL DB or MySQL DB, just change your data source properties here. Okay, and based on that, just change in your repo. When I say repo, if you will go to the DAO, it's up to you. If you are using Mongo and that dependency with you, just change to the Mongo repository. Okay, fine. Let's quickly run the application. Go to your main class. Let me run this. So it will take few seconds, so let's wait it to start. So you can see here application started on port 8080. Now let me check the Swagger first. Localhost 8080. You can also open the H2 console. Let me open it. Then we'll go to the Swagger. You can test your API from the Postman or you can check it from the Swagger as well. Okay. So the H2 is created the employee table, you can see here, but we don't have any data for now. Now let me open the Swagger one. Swagger-ui.html, right? Can you see here employee API with all the endpoint? Let me zoom this. All the endpoint, get of employee, post, get, delete, get, put for update, get for employee by ID, delete by employee ID, and what is this? This is for pagination, right? And post to add the employee. You can see the name here, right? Add new data, find all the data, pagination request, like that description is there for this particular API. So rather than using the Postman, I will directly test from here. Go to this post, and what you can do here, let me copy this. You are the payload, right? ID will be auto generated, so I can ignore. I'll just paste it. I'll give the department, let's say dev. ID will be auto populated, I can ignore for now. Then I can give the name, let's say John. Salary, let's say 1 lakh. Then just try it out. Can you see here the response we are getting? The record got inserted, ID is auto generated with 1. So let me add one more object. Let's say he is a full stack. Name is, let's say, Peter, and salary is 2 lakh. Just try it out. The ID is generated as 2 and the record got inserted. Now if you will verify in your H2 console, if you will run this, can you see here? It added 2 record, 1 and 2, whatever the value you inserted. It means whatever the CRUD operation generated by this particular plugins is working as expected, right? Now let me verify the GET API. So we can directly find out the GET API here. I will just use this. You can see the 2 employee what we added, and you can verify all the endpoint. Okay, so let me try for what else we have. Let me minimize this. Go to the IMPL, get employee by ID. Okay, I'll just try with this. That all the employee API you have with you, you can just play with those API. Let's say I want to play with ID 1. I can able to find. And if you want to, let's say you want to delete it, let me go and check in the Swagger UI. Where is the delete API? Let me minimize this. Go to the delete, give the required ID 1 and try it out. No content. And if you will verify you can directly verify from the DB, right? Run it, there is no record with ID 1. And if you'll check here, get all the employee, you can see only one record is there. Okay, so this is how you can go to the Swagger and you can verify all the endpoint directly. Okay, so the main advantages of this particular plugin, entity spring rest code generator, you just create your entity or you just define your schema in the form of entity, then all other layers of your application will be generated by this particular plugin, and that is what we practically demonstrate just now. Okay, it created the controller, DAO, mapper, service along with your test case. Okay, and if you observe the coding style, it properly follow the coding convention and the naming convention while defining the method, and it properly created the mapper and all, right? So I found this particular plugin will really helpful in your real-time work. So you can just give a try, add this particular plugin and create an entity, then try playing with this particular plugin and try to understand the generated class. Okay, so do let me know in a comment section if you guys have any doubts. That's all about this particular video, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Meet you soon with a new concept.